Hi, welcome to the 14-day weather forecast. In my update last week, I talked about the possibility of it turning hot towards the end of the first week. Well, that happened, and we actually recorded the highest temperature of the summer so far, 34.8 Celsius in Cambridge on Monday the 12th. Now, is that likely to be challenged as we head through the next 2 weeks? Well, here's the view across Europe and the North Atlantic. The animation begins at 18 GMT on Tuesday the 13th, and it's quite a mixed picture. There's a band of rain straddling the UK, still some warm air ahead of it, but cooler and fresher conditions returning from the west behind it. And as I run it, what we see is that rain clears away. I don't think there's going to be a great deal in the south, but it will introduce lower temperatures. Then another band of rain heads southwards again, it weakens. And as we head into and through the weekend, it's a similar story really. High pressure to the southwest building towards the UK, having quite a lot of influence across southern and central regions. So a lot of dry weather there, I think. And as I said, as weather fronts push southeastwards, they will be fragmenting. So rain amounts probably staying small, but not definitely. And I'll come back to that. Running through to conclusion, we see further disturbances affecting the west and the northwest. It could be very windy there at times, some heavier bursts of rain, but often it's the Azores high pressure which is having a good deal of say in the weather across the southern part of the United Kingdom. So that's where the warmest and driest conditions are likely to be. The upper air temperature sequence and jet stream profile really illustrates that. To begin with here, the yellow and orange shading over central and eastern England is indicating warm air aloft at about 1500 metres above sea level. The mottled shaded area there is the jet stream. And as I run it, what we see is that often jet stream's remaining close to the UK. Sometimes it heads a little bit further north, sometimes a little bit further south. When it goes northwards, we get warmer air pushing into southern counties. So temperatures will be fluctuating and it's quite a mixed picture. All in all, though, drier and warmer in the south, more changeable, so cooler and wetter in the northwest. I think it's just also worth taking a quick look at the wider picture, because at this time of year, tropical storms and hurricanes can have a big impact on the weather as they develop and then make their way across the Atlantic. The sequence here runs from Wednesday the 14th. At the bottom left there's a tropical storm or hurricane, not sure which it's going to turn out to be. And as I run it, what we see is that deepens. It just drifts slowly northwards over a period of several days, but then towards the end, as we head into next week, it gets a move on. It interacts with the jet stream and it starts heading towards Western Europe. And further down the line, through the second week, that could have some impacts on our weather. So coming back to the shorter term and a few charts to show the possible conditions down at the surface through the coming days. Wednesday the 14th of August, there's some patchy rain there in the southeast, just clearing away, cooler and fresher and brighter there in the north and the west. Forwards to Friday, dry really across all parts. It's still actually quite warm in the southeast, and I think that's the signal for much of the first week. Temperatures in the south staying close to or a little bit above the average, cooler as you head northwards and westwards. Into the weekend, a lot of dry weather around, 24, 25 Celsius there in the London area, pleasantly warm. So I think a lot of people will be pleased with that after the heat of recent days. And even in the north, although values are lower there, it is looking quite dry for a time. Sunday, the same story really, a risk of rain perhaps in the northwest, but a lot of dry weather around, at least according to this GFS model run which the charts are generated from. Then into next week, so Monday the 19th, some showery rain in the south, but it's quite warm. A greater risk of wet conditions there in Northern Ireland and Scotland. If at this point there's a deeper area of low pressure just to the northwest of the UK. So all in all, not too bad if those charts are correct. But it's just also worth picking up on one or two other things. There is the possibility of it being quite windy at times. These charts show forecast gust speeds. The one on the left is for 12 GMT on Thursday the 15th. 40 to 50, 55 mile an hour gusts there across Wales and northern England. Even in the south, it's quite a windy picture. And then the one on the right, 15 GMT on Friday the 16th, gust speeds of around 50 to 60 miles an hour in parts of northern and western Scotland. So something to keep an eye on as we head through the coming days. Also, I mentioned uncertainty about the rain risk in the south. The GFS showed amounts staying quite small, but conversely, the European model has quite a nasty area of rain pushing across southern Britain on Friday morning. So I think most of the computer model runs are not supporting this at the moment, but the ECM model is considered to be the best, so it's worth paying attention to. Once more, keep an eye on the short range forecast. There is that possibility, even in the south, of some significant amounts of rain. In more general terms, through days 0 to 5 is the aggregate. So if one on the left, the ECM, shows those higher rain totals in the south between 20 and 40 millimetres. On the right, the GFS shows a much drier picture in the south. Rain totals are between 1 and 6 millimetres. Both, though, have significant amounts in the northwest of the UK. And moving forwards to the 0 to 10 day charts, what we see is that the amounts in the northwest continue to stack up. The orange is beginning to appear in western Scotland, indicating over 100 millimetres of rain through the 10-day period. In the south and the east, the totals have not changed a great deal at all, suggesting a lot of dry weather in those areas through days 5 to 10. Now, in more general terms, how do the deterministic models compare with each other as we head towards the end of the first week? Here's the GFS, Tuesday the 20th, the high pressure to the southwest, low pressure to the northwest, so the driest conditions really in the southern part of the United Kingdom. The Canadian model has an area of low pressure there, maybe pushing further southwards and eastwards, bringing a more widespread risk of rain for a time, but the general pattern is similar. The German icon, a little bit different. We've got the high pressure there to the south and also over continental Europe, more of a southwesterly flow, some warmer air getting into the mix across central and eastern parts of England in particular. The European model, high pressure there over continental Europe, more of a south or southwesterly flow as well. The possibility there, at least, of some warmer air returning northwards across the UK for a time, perhaps. And finally, the UK Met Office Global, low pressure to the west, having a lot of influence, pushing down across the UK, weather fronts associated with it, bringing cloud and rain, probably drier there and warmer in the southeast and East Anglia. Taking them all together, it's quite a mixed picture. Low pressure having more say on the weather in the north and the northwest and the west of the UK. High pressure perhaps in the south and the east. At least that's the general theme, but there will of course be day-to-day variations. So I don't think it's going to be completely dry and settled even in the south, but that's where the warmest conditions are likely to be and the driest overall. So does that continue to be the case as we head through week 2? Of course, it's just about the trends and the probabilities at this range. And I'll start with the 16-day GEFS plot for London. 850 HPA temperatures across the top. The signal here from most of the runs is for them to be at least a little bit above the 30-year average, which is shown by the thick black line. There are some of them which are bringing in a very warm air again, so the chance of hot conditions is not discounted. Along the bottom, not too many rain spikes. It's actually quite a dry picture, not completely dry, but I think rain amounts would probably be staying quite low unless we got a thundery period of weather developing. The 2 metre temperature data tables, the values they are suggesting are probably higher than the comparable chart which I used last week. Maximums across the top, there's a fair amount of red, up to about 20-30%. Those runs going for between 26 and 30 Celsius. Lots of the pinky orange, the 21s to 25s. Overnight lows, I think, are also a little bit higher than on some of the recent updates. Mostly double figures. In fact, they're all in double figures. The yellows are minimums of between 11 to 15. The orange is there, 16 to 20, so the possibility of some uncomfortably muggy and rather warm nights. Manchester, a little bit different here across the top half because the signal is for temperatures to be close to the average. Quite a lot of fluctuation there with runs going above and below it, but overall it looks fairly typical. Along the bottom, there are more spikes there than there were on the London plot, so an ongoing risk of rain, and we're starting to see that pattern emerging, which is for more changeable conditions as you head northwards and westwards. The 2 metre temperatures for Manchester, quite respectable really, despite the changeable conditions. Lots of orange there. Maximums between 16 and 20, a fair amount of the pinky orange, 21 to 25, up to about 20 to 40% later on. So if anything, there's a little bit of a warming trend there towards the end of the week. Overnight lows, lots of runs keeping double figures, but there is some green showing up. Those are ones going for maximums or overnight minimums, sorry, between 6 and 10. Finally, up to Glasgow, the cooler conditions have really become reinforced here. In fact, the ensemble mean, the thick purple line, is a little below the thick black line, the 30-year average. There are some runs bringing in warmer conditions, but all in all, it does look as though it's going to be cooler in the northwest relative to the norm, because of course, if you just take the absolute values, it's generally cooler in the northwest, but I'm referring to these in terms of the averages for the locality. Along the bottom, lots of rain spikes here, so it's a wet picture, so it just reinforces that story that as you head northwards, it's going to be more unsettled, a greater risk of rain. The 2 metre temperature data tables also suggest lower values, lots of yellow there, and the maximums early on, 11 to 15 Celsius. That said, the amount of orange is increasing, so there is a possibility at least of it turning warmer towards the end of the second week, the 16s to 20s starting to dominate the columns there through the last 2 or 3 days of the second week. The overnight lows, as you would expect, are lower than they were in Manchester and certainly in London. Some of the dark green shading there indicating the possibility of ground frost on 1 or 2 nights. A low chance, but it's certainly not discounted. Rainfall in more general terms through week 2. The ECM probability charts here show the chance of 5 millimetres or more of rain falling on the first 3 days. The yellow shading then the west of Britain, parts of Northern Ireland too, is suggesting between 50 and 70%. The light blue shading covering the southeast and the east, particularly through days 2 and 3, possibly between 10 and 30%. So the general theme is for the weather to be coming in from the west again or the southwest, a greater risk of significant rainfall in Northern Ireland and Western Britain. That continues to be the case through the following 3 days. Not much change there at all. The pressure anomaly chart is quite interesting. This is generated from the GEFS and it's for days 10 to 15. Blues to the west of the UK, quite a strong blue there, a negative pressure anomaly, and to the east over continental Europe, the browny oranges indicate a positive anomaly. The reason I think it's quite interesting is because it may open up the gate to a pulse of very warm air moving up from the south once more. Definitely something to keep an eye on. Hot conditions could return with this type of general pattern. The ECM ensemble mean surface level pressure plot for Friday the 23rd also has something of a southwesterly theme there, and that could open up the gates once more to that warm air moving northwards out of continental Europe. But on the whole, it's a changeable picture in the northern half of the UK, and Atlantic influence bringing an ongoing risk of showers or longer spells of rain. The mean surface level pressure data table for York, generated from the GEFS going through week 2. The trend, if anything, is upwards later on. There's more yellow appearing in the columns and a little bit of orange. Those are runs which are going for, mostly at least, going for close to or above average pressure. Earlier on, lots of green there indicating between 996 and 1010 millibars, so below the norm. There's even a little bit of blue and purple. Those runs going for significantly deep areas of low pressure. But the trend later on is upwards. All in all, quite a mixed picture, I think, but let's have a look at the summary. Week 1, generally changeable, but in the south, amounts of rain remain small. Probably because there is some uncertainty about Friday. Overall, temperatures are expected to be close to the average in the north and slightly above it in the south. Week 2, dry and rather warm periods are forecast for the south, although some rain is likely. In the north, it's a generally more unsettled picture. The potential for significant amounts of rain, especially in the northwest. It could also be windy at times. Towards the end, though, it may be turning drier there too. And just finally, it's worth flagging up the chance that hot conditions could return into the south and the east. Not really expected at the moment, but don't discount the possibility. So, there we have it. Mixed on the whole, but probably quite a pronounced north to south split developing. Warmer and drier in the south, cooler and wetter in the north. And, dare I say it, in southern areas, I think this may now be turning into quite a decent summer. But I'd be very interested to know what you think, so do let me know in the comments section. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. As ever, if you did, then please hit the like button, or at least consider doing so. Also, subscribe to the channel. In that way, you will not miss any future updates. Of course, don't forget as well to stay up to date with the day-to-day weather developments by checking out the TheWeatherOutlook.com website. Thanks very much now. Bye.